Now we're going to talk about sed and awk. We'll start with awk first. Awk is cut on steroids. That's basically the best way to describe it. And awk is what people used before they had R or Python pandas or Perl or other things. Awk is basically a full-fledged programming language. And you may sit there going, "Oh God, I don't need that." And it's going to turn out, I'm just going to tell you right now, you do need it. You absolutely need awk. I'm going to show you a few things that you can do both with awk and with cut, and then I'm going to show you the way to do it just with awk. So let's see where we are. We're currently in SGMs. Okay. For this, I think I want to use the file. I think I'm going to use the Feldman file. So let me look at yeah, this is a great file. So if we look at this file, what we see is that there are lines that span multiple lines. Basically, the equal sign is used as a, hey, the line is still going separator. I'm not going to teach you how to get rid of that right now because it's a little bit of a nuisance and it's a little extraneous. But you can see that these lines are variable lengths. Like, they're all variable lengths in terms of the numbers of entries, right? Here's, this has some number of entries, and this, I'm just going to scroll down here. This line only has, no, don't ask again. Yes, I do want the scroll wheel to work. Thank you. That was weird. In any case, this line has this number of entries, right? So it's got just a few, they've got random numbers of entries. Let's pretend someone asked me, "Hey, Dave, we want to figure out for any of these lines, what is the last element of the line before the brace?" We would like that. What do we do with that? And the answer is pretty simple. There's a few ways around this. And I'm going to show you, first of all, what we've learned with cut and how to do it. But then I'm going to show you how to do this with awk, because it's a little bit cleaner with awk. So with cut, what we'd want to do is we'd want to grep for the brace in that file and see if we can find that. And there's all the lines of the brace. And then, the smarter people would be like, "Oh, but there's lines in which the brace, fell off the end of the line. Let's ignore that for now. Let's pretend the line breaks aren't really killing us." And what I'd like to do is I'd also like to find lines where there's a brace and a thing before the brace, like something in quotes before the brace. So I think I'm also going to want to grep for a quote. There. So these are the lines with quotes in them. And now I want the thing right before the brace. How do I do that? Because all these lines are variable length. Well, the brace is at the end of the line, so I can pipe it into reverse. There. There you can see these are the lines all reversed, but you can see now everything's nicely aligned, and you can just grab the thing right. So now if I separate this based on quotes, so if I do, obviously if I just go cut -d quote -f 1 through 3 piped into glass, I get that. I want the second thing in the quotes, so I'm actually going to just look for the second field, and then I'm going to pipe it in reverse. And there we go. That's the thing. Right there. You just pulled out the last element of every single line of variable length lines, which is pretty cool. It's good that you can do that, but as you can see, there's spaces in here and, like the letter N. I don't know what that is. So is there a way to do this without using something that looks like this? And the answer is you can use awk. So what is awk? Awk is pretty simple. I'm going to start with the basics for awk. So awk is like cut. So if I go awk, I'm gonna start by doing this. I'm gonna grep. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing for Feldman. Piped into awk, print $0. Literally, awk uses this $sign to show what variable you are on the... so basically, lines are split according to whatever awk separator is at the time. Awk usually separates things based on spaces. So if I printed... but $0 is the entire line. So if I do that, I'm just going to get everything. If there's a line here, you see how there's spaces in this line. So because there's spaces in that line, if I were to do $1 instead of $0, you notice that it split the line like the most ended, right? And the iron ore that was in this line, it's now just iron. So awk is giving me, if I do $0 again, you can see that it's splitting. So awk is right now splitting on spaces. What I'd really like to split on is quotes, though. So I want to split on quotes. So awk can do that. So the way awk does that is with something -f. It's just like cut. And I can do this. There. And now it's splitting on quotes. Awk also has internal variables. One of awk's internal variables is NF. I'm going to print NF, comma, $0 just to show you what it can do. So awk is now telling me how many fields there are in each line, and then it's printing the line out. Oh, it's printing the whole line. So you may say, well, why are there, why are there 6? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. There's 5 quote marks, so there's 6 elements. So awk can actually tell me how many elements there are in each line, which is really great, obviously, because now what I can do is I can go scrolling through this, and I can say, hey, I want to print the last element. Or actually, it's not the last one. The last element would be this. I want to print the second to last element. So awk lets you do math. So what I can do is I can print, I'm going to put some spaces in here just so you can actually see what's going on. This isn't going to affect anything. Instead of printing $0, I'm going to print First, I'll print $1 just to show you. There's the first element of each line. Okay, good. We printed the first element. But I can also print the last element of each line with the NF. That's the last element of each line. And if I want the second to last element, it's a programming language. I can do this. NF -1. And there's the last element in each line. So that's obviously a lot nicer than using reverse and grep and cut a million times over. It's really, really pretty. And you can change. So now I've got everything just sitting there. It's really, it worked really, really well. However, that grep is still in there. It's, we're grepping for that thing. Well, another thing awk can do, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to get rid of, I'm just going to show you for the sake of this again. I'm going to do this argument again, just grepping for the brace, sorry, for the bracket. And you can see that's what it looks like. Awk can do the same thing. Awk uses, basically it's parsing for regular expressions. And again, I'm not sure I've mentioned this. I'm not going to teach you guys regular expressions. Regular expressions are fantastic to learn. They are a lifesaver in so many different ways, but they're incredibly complicated to learn. And the worst thing is that they're not really consistent between systems. So if you're working in Python, I strongly recommend you learn the regular expressions for Python's RE module. And if you learn awk and sed, I would suggest you learn the regular expressions for those. Grep also takes regular expressions if you want, but the encoding for the regular expressions will be slightly different between these platforms, which is really annoying. In any case, here's awk. If I use these slashes, and I just do that on the file, boom, it's literally performing a grep on that file just for that thing. It's doing the exact same thing as grep. And if I wanted to do the same thing in awk that I did before, I could just take this line. I could go awk-f to split on quotes, and then I could take the code that we had before. So what is this doing? It is splitting. So it's searching for close bracket, and it is splitting the line by quotation marks, and then it's printing the second to last element. Boom. Same thing, all one language, all clear, all right there. Really, really convenient. Really, really nice. However, that's not the end of it, obviously. Let's pretend I wanted awk then to tell me... So let's pretend, actually, I'm going to use a different file for this. I'm going to go back to the SGMs file. So I'm going to go back to the SGMs directory, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go awk. I'm going to search for the equal sign in, awk, the equal sign of, and I'm going to print the whole line of Reuters 01. And here's all the equal sign lines. You see the old ID thing, how it's a number, and you see the new ID thing, how it's another number. Let's pretend I wanted to add those numbers and return that. Well, that's pretty easy. I can just obviously, I don't want to count. Let's also pretend for the moment that these lines are variable length, even though they're not. Let's pretend they're variable length, so I don't want to have to count it. Well, I can split the line by quotes, and then I can, oh, and by the way, these lines have the text things in them. So I may actually just search for Reuters. Actually, if I search for Lewis split, that'll be fine. So I'm going to search for Lewis split. There we go. That'll be fine. And that looks like it's... Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's everything. So these lines... Oh, actually, they are variable length. Look at that. The CSEX lines have additional stuff in them, which is great. So I only want the old ID and the new ID. Okay, if I split this line by quotes, I don't want the last element. I want the second to last element and the fourth to last element. So what I can do is I can print dollar. Now I want to split it up by quote again. So I'm going to do by quote. And by the way, awk can split things by anything. I'm actually going to show you this. Awk can split things up by the word split. It doesn't have to be a single character. Awk can do anything. So if I do that, right now I haven't split it, but if I split it up by the word split, you see, here's the first word split. If I want it to return everything up to then, or actually let's return everything between the word split. If I wanted to return, see, the word split is here, and the word split is here. If I wanted to return everything in there, I can print $2, and there we go. Boom, right there. So so that's fantastic. Awk can use different length separators. So if I'm going to use the quote as a separator, and I'm going to print, as I just said, I want the fourth to last field, and by the way, unlike cut, which has to put things in order, I can put things in any order. So I can put them in that order if I want to. There we go. Oh, oops, I missed. Yeah, that was wrong. So in any case, whoops. There we go. That's what I want here. And you can see it. Now, what if I want to actually print this sum of these two? Well, that's really easy as well. It's a programming language. I can just do this. Bang. Let's print the sum of these two things. There you go. There's the sum of them right there. Isn't that nice? So, and now the interesting thing about this is that awk can do many, many different things that are, because it's a programming language, it can do things like, let's pretend I want the sum of all of these things over all lines. How would I do this? Okay, the first thing I'd do, now, here's the mild nuisance. Awk is going to end up printing the line if I don't tell it what to print, and I don't want it to print anything. So I'm actually going to just go grep Lewis split in that file, piped into awk, and get rid of this thing, because I'm going to have it do things that don't involve printing. Now, what I have here is, I have the same, this is the same exact thing. Oh no, I'm sorry, that failed. There we go. Piped into awk, -f, blah, 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 blah. Oh no, because I have the Reuters there. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. There we are. There you are. There, cool. There we are, there's everything. Now, if I want the sum of all these things, what do I do? Well, I can use awk to take sums. I can use begin, a = 0, and then a plus equals this, and I already know this is going to fail. Print a. Pipe. I don't even need to pipe it into less. I can just hit enter. Oh, there we go. It actually worked. It printed everything out. Sometimes that fails because I've been cavalier about the whole thing, and maybe I had lines in here I didn't want. Let's pretend there are lines. Let's pretend I had actually, instead of grepping on Lewis split, I'd grepped on the equals sign. I think this will No, it still succeeded. Okay. Occasionally, this will fail because you've unfortunately put in lines that are too long for some reason, like you had some garbage lines. You can throw an if statement in here as well. You can say if nf is greater than 3, then do all this. There. This isn't going to change anything. But what if I say if nf is greater than 4 or 5? I can actually, I'm literally now programming. If nf is greater than 5, do this. Actually, this isn't going to change much of anything because I think I don't know what the field lengths are. Let me see what the field lengths are for this file real quick. Piped into awk. Here we are, print nf. Oh, I have to do the field separator on that. There we go. Bang. Piped into less. Piped into sort. Piped into unique. There we go. Because that's how you do things. 11, 13, and 3. That's awesome. Okay, so let's bring this down here and say if nf is greater than 12, print this. Boom. Right there. There. So these are the sums of the things, of the lines where the number of fields is 13. And if I say if nf is less than 12, I get a different line. So that's great. You can use awk as a full-fledged programming language. Why would you want to do this and not Python? That's a really good question, and the answer is occasionally it's just faster to do this on a command line and stream through a file. Awk is it streams through files really, really, really quickly. It can give you results really fast on things. If it's a really fast one-off and you're not putting anything in production and you just need to know something about a file, sometimes it's just faster to use awk. But it depends on how good you are at awk versus Python and other things. If it turns out that you're better at Python or R or something else, then use those languages. But awk can let you do things. Awk is really just cut on steroids. You should view it like that. It can do multiple variables as well. If I have, it's simple. I can do a equals 0. Like this is simple. B equals 0, and then b plus equals nf minus 1 there, and I can print a comma b there, and then I just calculated the sum of one of the fields and the sum of a if the number of fields is less than 12. So there, awk is a full-fledged programming language. I don't think there's anything much else you need to learn about awk. I could literally print the ratio of a and b, right? So there, right? So you get really fast estimates of like simple things from files if you want to using awk, especially. The issue with using something like Python or R is what if your file has a lot of multiple length fields and you want the third to the last field in all the lines. That's kind of a bear to do using Python. You can do it, or using R. You can do it definitely, but it's really easy using awk. So, and it's something that I use. I probably use awk maybe twice a month, but it's absolutely crucial both those times. It's really super necessary. Now that we've learned awk, we're going to learn sed. Sed is totally different from awk. Sed has nothing to do with awk, and putting these two together is a little weird, but sed is also a language that is kind of complicated, and as I just said at the beginning, I'm not going to teach you regular expressions, so I'm only going to teach you a handful of things about sed. I'm actually going to cop out of this one and say I'm going to be cheap and say you have to look up tutorials for sed if you want to know how to do things better in sed. What is sed? Sed is a stream editor. It's SED. And what does it do? It's simple. I'm going to grep equals in that thing and pipe that into less, and here get our lines. What if I don't want the phrase split in any of these lines? I just want to get rid of the phrase split. What I would do is I would pipe that into sed, and I would search for split and replace it with nothing globally, and all the splits are gone. Right there. So sed allows you to edit lines. What if I want to just replace the first instance of split in every line? I get rid of the G. So you see the split is back for CGI split, but out of Lewis split, it's gone. What if I wanted to replace the quotes with colons? That's easy. You just literally do quote with colon. And I need to do it globally. Bang, it's there. Why didn't I have to delimit the quotes? What happened? Well, I have these things in single quotes right here. What if I want to work with slashes, Dave? What if I actually want to be replacing slashes in my files? Like, what if I have a file with slashes in it? You can also... So the best thing about sed is if I replace all of the slashes with pipes, it still works. Sed's really weird that way and kind of convenient that way. So if you don't want to have to deal with, like if you have slashes throughout a file for some reason, or you have pipes throughout a file, just use one or the other. You can always back delimit and catch the other one if you need to, but it's really, really simple to do this. Sed can use really powerful regular expressions to find pretty much anything that you want and replace it with anything else that you want. I probably could do an entire series on anything that sed could do. Sed is ridiculously powerful at being able to find and replace stuff in files. If you do a lot of text processing or database processing, sed is completely invaluable. Sed is ludicrously useful. I don't do a lot of database processing, and frankly, what I end up doing often is what often happens is if you have, what is sed really good for, and I'm going to give you the cheap hack that a lot of people, it's like a standard thing. You shouldn't do this often, but sometimes it's easier to do this. Let's pretend I have code, a giant code base, and I want to change just one variable in that code, and it's in the middle of the code base. It's not in a nice place which you can get to with a convenient API. It's really buried in the middle of the code base. So if I called the code base, I'd have to really, and I wanted to change it from the top level. Like I have main that calls run A, that calls run B, that calls run C, that calls run D, and somewhere buried in run D is that variable. How would I change that variable if I want to run the code base in 3 different areas with 3 different variables? Well, one easy way to do it is in your code, you just say my variable equals parameter, my variable, like that, or something like that. Inside your code, inside your Python code, or any code, really. Doesn't matter. It could be C code, R code, anything. And then you just go... You just take your code and you go sed parameter my variable. There's a lot of actual software engineers that might be looking at this, screaming at me, saying, this is not good. This is exactly what you shouldn't do. I'm sorry I'm using a hacky pattern, guys. I'm sorry. It's a fairly hacky thing. But you can replace it with the actual variable that you want. And there you go. Now you've actually replaced your one parameter with that thing within your code. My code .py or .c.r. USA.qq. You've replaced it in your code, and congrats, now you can actually, unleash this code on one server with it as 5.0, and then on another server you can change that over to 2.5. And that way you can change and you do that, what you do is you do this, and then you'd write that, and what you'd probably do is call this mycode.py.template. You would call your code.template, and you'd write that into mycode.py. So there. Now you've created a templatized version of your code, and you're replacing variables in that code. I'm pointing with my finger, I'm a moron. And then you're writing out new code. There you go. Sed is really useful for things like that. As I said, sed can do just 1.5 billion regular expressions. Sed is ludicrously good at regular expressions, but I'm not going to teach that because they are so powerful, and they are so... If you want to use regular expressions in sed, by all means it's great, but go find another tutorial, because that is something that is a gigantic... And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's a fantastic thing to learn, but man, it's a huge mountain of stuff to learn, and it often doesn't make sense to learn for the regular expressions all of it at once. Usually you have to learn enough to fit your first use case and then your second use case, and then over time you get better at regular expressions. If I made a regular expressions cheat sheet like this one, And the only reason I haven't is because there already are regular expressions cheat sheets. There are really good ones out there. I would suggest just Googling and finding a regular expressions cheat sheet or two and having that around. And that way you don't even have to look around. You just have your cheat sheet right there, and you don't ever have to look for, you can just do the regular expressions that you need to do. That's why I built this Linux cheat sheet, is because there doesn't appear to be one anywhere that people can refer to quickly. So you've learned awk and sed. That's great. Our next lesson is going to be about comparing files using diff.